On the 12th of April in 1862, exactly 1 year after the first shells fell upon Fort Sumter, an ordinary wooden passenger train sat idling beside a quiet hotel depot in northern Georgia, its heavy iron boiler resting cold and silent under an overcast morning sky. The passengers and crew had stepped inside the Lacy Hotel for a brief 20-minute breakfast stop at Big Shanty, completely unaware that a group of covert Union volunteers was watching every move from the surrounding pine trees. In the span of just a few unhurried minutes, those disguised men uncoupled the passenger cars and seized the engine in broad daylight, setting into motion 87 miles of the most improbable pursuit in military history. The station at Big Shanty had been chosen for one crucial reason above all others: a single omission in infrastructure that made the daring theft possible. There was no telegraph office anywhere on the premises, meaning no instant message could be flashed ahead to alert the garrisons along the line. Directly across the iron rails from the platform lay Camp McDonald, a major Confederate military training site housing hundreds of armed recruits. Yet even with sentries posted nearby, the hijackers operated with absolute composure in the early morning stillness. Inside the Lacy Hotel dining room, conductor William Fuller sat having his meal alongside his engineer Jefferson Kane and railroad foreman Anthony Murphy. The sharp hiss of releasing steam and the rhythm of chugging iron echoed through the open window, cutting instantly through the quiet morning conversation. Foreman Anthony Murphy sprang to his feet, shouting to the room that someone was running off with their locomotive. The mastermind behind this audacious enterprise was James J. Andrews, a calm civilian scout working closely with Union intelligence forces. He had recruited roughly 24 men for the mission, nearly all of them soldiers who had volunteered from various Ohio infantry regiments. They had boarded the northbound train at various stops along the route, traveling in ones and twos to avoid attracting suspicion. Whenever questioned by railroad personnel, Andrews smoothly claimed they were Confederate Secret Service agents rushing ammunition to General Beauregard. Their tactical objective was straightforward but immense: systematically destroy the Western and Atlantic Railroad line running north toward Chattanooga. By burning bridges and severing telegraph lines, they hoped to isolate Chattanooga, just as a Union army prepared to strike the city. The locomotive they had captured was named the General, a powerful 440 American-type steam engine built in 1855. Along with the engine, the raiders had seized 3 empty boxcars, leaving the passenger coaches sitting abandoned at the Big Shanty platform. As the General accelerated out of the depot, conductor William Fuller rushed onto the empty platform into the cold, damp air. His initial assumption was that draft-evading Confederate deserters had taken the train and would soon abandon it a few miles up the track. Without waiting for help or seeking orders, Fuller did something entirely extraordinary for a man facing a runaway steam engine. He set off on foot, running directly down the center of the track after the stolen train for roughly 2 full miles. Along the way, Fuller came across a small maintenance crew using a simple wooden platform car, often called a handcar. He commandeered the vehicle and began frantically poling it north along the rails by hand alongside his crew members. Up ahead, the raiders had pulled up a section of iron rail and left it laid across the ties as a trap. Fuller's handcar hit the broken segment at speed, throwing the men into the dirt and wrecking the small platform. Undeterred, Fuller and his men hauled the heavy wooden car back onto the iron lines and resumed their manual pursuit. At the Etowah ironworks, Fuller reached the branch line and commandeered his first actual locomotive, an engine named the Yonah. With real steam power now beneath him, the nature of the chase changed from a desperate foot race into a high-speed duel. Farther north, Andrews and his raiders pulled to a stop at regular intervals to execute their planned sabotage. They climbed utility poles and severed telegraph lines, ensuring that no message could travel faster than their stolen engine. They used crowbars to pry up heavy iron rails, tossing them into the roadside brush to derail any possible pursuers. While these obstacles delayed Fuller, every single stop cost the raiders precious minutes and burned valuable firewood. To obstruct the line behind them, the raiders uncoupled one of the empty wooden boxcars and left it sitting on the track. When Fuller encountered the abandoned car, he simply slowed his engine, coupled to it, and pushed it ahead into the next siding. Next, the raiders set fire to their second boxcar and uncoupled it inside a covered wooden bridge to ignite the structure. Fuller did not hesitate, pushing his locomotive straight into the smoke and shoving the blazing car clear out the other side. Then the raiders encountered an unforeseen environmental factor that no amount of planning could have overcome. It had rained heavily across northern Georgia all through the previous night, thoroughly soaking every tree and structure along the route. The wood was completely saturated, making it virtually impossible for the raiders to ignite the bridges they needed to destroy. At the crucial Ustanola Bridge near Resaca, their attempt to burn the wooden superstructure failed completely for this reason. Without destroyed bridges to block the line, the core tactical plan behind the entire raid began to fall apart. Meanwhile, Fuller's unrelenting chase expanded, ultimately forcing him to utilize 3 separate locomotives across the course of the day. After the Yonah, he commandeered the William R. Smith and finally took command of a powerful engine named the Texas. Because of how the Texas was positioned on a sidetrack when commandeered, there was no time to turn the engine around on a turntable. As a result, Fuller drove the Texas backwards in reverse for almost the entire duration of the pursuit. He picked up armed men and railroad employees at every stop, building a formidable pursuit force as they roared north. Over rough and uneven 1862 iron track, speeds during the chase reached as high as an incredible 60 miles per hour. Then came the decisive turn in the chase, and it was not a physical breakdown on the line. Just south of Calhoun, Fuller spotted a young telegraph operator named Edward Henderson walking near the tracks. Without stopping the engine, Fuller reached down and pulled the young operator aboard the cab of his speeding locomotive. While standing in the rocking engine cab, Fuller scribbled out an urgent warning message detailing the hijackers and their trajectory. As they slowed slightly at the next station, Henderson jumped off with the paper and rushed to the local telegraph wire. He successfully transmitted the alert directly to Chattanooga before the raiders could reach the line to sever it. The raiders had cut every wire behind them, but Fuller had managed to get a message through directly in front of them. From that moment on, the raiders lost their vital advantage of surprise, with enemy garrisons now lying in wait ahead. Pursued far too closely to stop for proper refueling, the general was running critically low on wood, fuel, and water. At the small station of Tilton, they made a desperate stop, managing to take on only a fraction of necessary supplies. They pulled away after taking on only a brief splash of water, leaving their boiler dangerously undersupplied. The climax of the great train chase came not through a dramatic collision or gun battle, but as a silent mechanical failure. At around 1 o'clock in the afternoon, after nearly 7 hours of continuous pressure, the general's steam power finally gave out. The engine ground to a complete halt at milepost 116.3, roughly 2 miles north of Ringgold. They had traveled 87 miles from Big Shanty, but were still 18 miles short of their objective in Chattanooga. With the locomotive dead on the tracks and pursuers closing in, James Andrews ordered his men to abandon the train. The raiders scattered individually and in small groups into the dense, rain-soaked Georgia wilderness on foot. An extensive manhunt swept the surrounding countryside, backed by cavalry, militia units, and local search parties. Within a few days, every single member of the raiding party, including Andrews himself, had been hunted down and captured. Because they operated in civilian clothing behind enemy lines, James J. Andrews and 7 of his men were tried and executed as spies. 8 other raiders later made a daring escape from a prison camp, while the remainder were eventually exchanged as prisoners of war. When judged purely as a military enterprise, the Andrews raid was a complete and undeniable failure. Not a single bridge along the line was destroyed, and the Western and Atlantic Railroad remained fully operational the following day. Confederate supply lines between Atlanta and Chattanooga were never severed, leaving military operations in the region entirely unaffected. Yet despite the operational outcome, the extraordinary courage shown by the raiders led to a profound moment in military history. 19 of the soldier volunteers who participated in the mission were awarded the newly created Medal of Honor. They were the very first recipients of the decoration in American history, beginning a legacy that endures to this day. James J. Andrews himself was ineligible to receive the award, strictly because he was a civilian scout rather than an enlisted soldier. The locomotive itself survived the Civil War intact, remaining in active service on Southern rail lines for decades afterward. In 1893, the historic engine was exhibited at the World's Columbian Exposition in Chicago, drawing vast crowds of onlookers. Today, the general stands preserved inside a museum in Georgia, a silent monument to one of the most intense pursuits ever recorded. We often think of famous chases as contests decided purely by mechanical speed, power, and horsepower. Yet this 87-mile chase was ultimately decided by soaking rain that refused to let timber catch fire, and by a single relentless conductor who began his pursuit on foot simply because there was no other way to raise the alarm. If you had been sitting at that breakfast table in Big Shanty when the engine moved, would you have run after a stolen train on foot? Share your thoughts in the comments below and subscribe for more deep journeys into history.